Hello and welcome back to another LMK podcast video. For this video, we are going to be going over the Eastern Conference off-season plans. Now, we split it up into three parts for this video. For the first part of this video, we're going to be doing the Northeast Division, which consists of the Celtics, 76ers, Knicks, Nets, and Raptors. Without further ado, let's get into the video. So first up, some background on the Celtics. Of course, they finished 64-18, the best record in the NBA this season. They won the finals on a 16-3 playoff run. They beat the Miami Heat in 5. They beat the Cleveland Cavaliers in 5, the Indiana Pacers in 4, and then the Mavericks in 5. This recent draft, which happened just a few days ago, they drafted Baylor Shireman, a shooter who shoots 38% from 3 on 8 attempts per game, and Anton Watson in the second round. The Celtics are a second apron team, $50.8 million over the cap. And so a plan for them this season is just do whatever it takes to run it back. Sign Derek White and Xavier Tillman back to the team. I think those are the two main players that they need to sign back. They can still compete even though all these teams around them are making moves such as the Knicks. And their odds are plus 280 to win the championship in this upcoming season. For the Knicks, some background on them, they finished 50-32, right behind the Celtics in the Eastern Conference. They were second. They lost in the conference semifinals in 7 to the Pacers. In this recent draft, they drafted Keyshawn George, Pacome Dadlet, Ajay Mitchell, and Melvin Ajinka. And the Knicks are a second apron team, $85 million over the cap. And the Knicks, their plan for this offseason, they could already be done. They didn't need a lot to do. They were already an amazing team in this very competitive Eastern Conference and National Basketball Association. They could already be done. They added another amazing piece to their team to further bolster their defense. They signed Mikal Bridges from the Brooklyn Nets. And Mikal, here's the question here, does Mikal put them over the hump? And can this team really compete with the Celtics now? Some background for the Raptors. They finished 25-57. They finished 12th in the Eastern Conference. They missed the play-in by 11 games. Now, of course, they've signed Scotty Barnes to an extension as of recent days. In this recent draft, they drafted Jacoby Walker and Jonathan Mogbo, and they are $58.9 million over the cap. So the plan for the Raptors this offseason, continue to develop their young players. They have a nice trio going there in Quickly, Barrett, and Barnes. Continue to develop this team. Obviously, they signed Barnes to an extension. They signed Quickly as well. I think they need to re-sign R.J. Barrett, who averaged 22, 6, and 4 on Toronto in 32 games played and started this season. Of course, the Raptors already traded for Davion Mitchell and Sasha Vezenkov from the Kings, and Davion Mitchell could be a backup point guard, and he could very much improve their defense. Next, we go to the 76ers. Some background on the 76ers. They finished 47-35. They finished 7th in the East. And they lost in the first round to the New York Knicks in 6 games. They just really could not perform well for most of the playoffs there to really get themselves into that second round. In this recent draft, they drafted Jared McCain and Adam Bona, and they are $77.7 million under the cap, but the catch there is they only have 3 players signed there. So those 3 players make up all the rest of that or all of what's not part of that $77.7 million. So a plan for the 76ers headed into this offseason. You got to sign Tyrese Maxey back. He won Most Improved Player this past season, and he's proving to be an amazing second option on this 76ers team, one of the best second options in the NBA. Of course, his speed and quickness are crucial to his game. Other signings needed, Buddy Hield, Kyle Lowry, D'Anthony Melton is a very nice player for the Sixers team, really adds depth to their team. And of course, Kelly Oubre Jr., a staple in that starting lineup. Trade for a third star. Of course, we have some trade pieces available here. We have Paul Reed, Robert Covington, if he is signed back to the team. a 2026 and a 2028 first rounder. And then who would that third star be? Some options here I've listed are Brandon Ingram, Lauri Markkanen, and Paul George. Of course, all those players involved in a lot of trade talks as of recent days, and with free agency starting very, very shortly, we'll see just what happens to these players and what these teams are going to do. And last but not least, we have the Nets, and their background is they finished 32-50 in this past season, 11th in the Eastern Conference. They missed the play-in by just 4 games. They had no picks in this draft, and they are $6.5 million under the cap with a lot of young players who can really help this team move up in the future. Now, plan for the Nets this offseason, I think Ben Simmons is just not working out, and he's making around $40 million a year. I would say just let him go. I don't even believe that you could get a lot for him. I believe he's too injury prone. I believe he just doesn't play enough games to really make him worth the $40 million that they signed him for. They already traded Mikal Bridges to the Knicks. I think that was an amazing trade. They got 6 first-rounders for him. It was very worth it for the Nets. And then you just have to continue to develop the young players. Cam Thomas really showed that he could be a leader and a number 1 option for this team. And Nicholas Claxton is an amazing center, defensively, offensively, rebounding. Of course, I have the stats there. Cam Thomas averaged 23, 3, and 3, and Claxton with 12, 10, and 2 this last season. And then even if you went for a high draft pick next season to add to this team, it could create a very interesting dynamic here for this Nets team. Alright, so the next division we have up is the off-season plans for the Central Division. This includes the Bucks, Cavaliers, Pacers, Bulls, and Pistons. Similar to the Northeastern Division, the Central Division has good teams, some teams that need some work, and then in a little difference, this division has the Pistons, who of course were the worst team in the NBA this season, and we're going to analyze what these teams need to do to really prepare for the future and have the best possible season where they can make the most progress. So first up, some background on the Bucks. They finished 49-33 this season. That was good enough for 3rd place in the Eastern Conference. They lost in the first round in 6 to the Indiana Pacers. They drafted A.J. Johnson and Tyler Smith in this recent draft, and they are $41.8 million over the cap space. Of course, the Bucks have been a very competitive team for many years now, and of course, it's been them and the Celtics who have really battled it out for who wins the conference. But the Bucks lost in the first round this season, largely because Giannis was out of that series. So it'll be very eager to see how this upcoming season, when the Bucks will almost definitely make the playoffs, and if Giannis is there, how far can they go with this Giannis and Dame duo? And that brings us into their plan for the offseason. I think that they need to live out another year with Dame and Giannis. I think they would have gone farther had Giannis played more of the season and more of the playoffs. I think it would have been a Bucks-Celtics conference finals, and we'd be having a very different discussion here regarding whether the Celtics won the championship, because I don't think it's as much of a guarantee that they would have even made it. So once again, you just need to see if the duo plays better in an increasingly competitive Eastern Conference. This conference is very much competitive, obviously not as competitive as the Western Conference, but I believe 2 and onward is really up for grabs here in this Eastern Conference. And I actually think the Bucks have reason to go get Zach LaVine. They would have to trade Connaughton, Portis, and Lopez, but I believe that they can also make a push for Drummond in free agency. They could shake up the team a lot while leaving the core 3 players, of course, Dame, Giannis, and Middleton, all intact. And you're looking at a starting lineup of Dame, LaVine, Middleton, Giannis, and Drummond. That is a very intriguing starting lineup, considering you don't need Drummond to score, you need him to play defense, and of course you need him to get rebounds, and Drummond averaged 9 off the bench. Drummond has led the league in rebounding multiple years of his career, so I think he can still have an effect for this Bucks team if they were to sign him. Now, next we have the Cleveland Cavaliers. Some background on them. They finished 48-34, 4th place in the Eastern Conference. Their season ended losing in 5 to the Celtics in the conference semifinals after beating the Magic in 7. They drafted Jalen Tyson, and they are $18 million over the cap. And a plan for the Cavaliers offseason, they need to make a push at Brandon Ingram. I think Brandon Ingram would be a great addition to this team. And I've also included the theoretical starting 5 there if they were to get him. Garland, Mitchell, Ingram at the 3, Mobley at the 4, and Allen at the 5. I believe this would be maybe one of the best starting fives in the league. Some pieces to trade here if they wanted to get him. They have Max Strus, Karis LeVert, Isaac Okoro, and some second-round picks. Now, of course, looking at these trade pieces, it might not be as possible, and the Pelicans might not even consider this with all those trade pieces. But I think it's worth making the phone call. I think if there's even a chance that you get Ingram on this team, you do it, and you keep that starting 5 intact. I believe that is a great choice for this Cleveland team. Next up, we have the Pacers. Some background on the Pacers. They really surprised teams this year, making it all the way to the Eastern Conference Finals as a 6 seed. They finished 47-35. Unfortunately, they did meet the Celtics in those Eastern Conference Finals, where they got swept. In this recent draft, they drafted Juan Nunez, Tristan Newton, and Enrique Freeman, and they have $32.8 million in cap space to work with this offseason. Where they should go get defense. They had the best offense in the league, but they gave up a lot of points this season. Their defense was not, in fact, top in the league. So some defenders to go for in this offseason, I researched, were Herb Jones and Michael Porter Jr. Now, their weakest offensive point you could make an argument for in these playoffs was Aaron Nesmith. So maybe replace him with a better defender, push him to the bench. Now, Aaron Nesmith, good at defense, but not really fitting this Indiana Pacers type of system. So perhaps Herb Jones, 5th in defensive rating among small forwards last season, could be a better option, or Michael Porter Jr., 9th in defensive rating in the same category. Find some trade pieces, see if you can go get them, and evaluate from there. Some background on the Chicago Bulls. They finished 39-43, 9th place in the Eastern Conference. They lost in the play-in to the Miami Heat. They drafted Matas Buzelis in this recent draft. They are $11 million under the cap. And so I think the Bulls just need to blow it up. I don't think they're going to do anything with their current roster. I think that they just don't have enough pieces to really make a deep push into the playoffs. You know, they've been a play-in team for a very long time. Trade DeRozan and Levine away. And I think you take on contracts and ask teams for picks. You know, we're taking those contracts from you. We want picks as well. And I think Ben Simmons and Chris Paul are just 2 examples of contracts that they may be able to take on. And finally, the Pistons. The background on the Pistons, of course, they finished 14-68, worst record in the NBA. One of the worst records we've ever seen, one of the worst seasons we've ever seen. They lost the most games in a row we've ever seen from a team. They missed the play-in by 22 games. They were long out of the playoffs before anybody else. They drafted Ron Holland and Cam Spencer, and they have $53.5 million in cap space to work with. Now, the plan for the Pistons, of course, there's not a lot that they can do to really become a playoff team instantly. I just say continue to develop the young players such as Jaden Ivey and Cade Cunningham. You know, Jaden Ivey has these spurts where he can be a very effective player in the game. Of course, his career high is 37. He can really become a great player if they just continue to develop him. Cade Cunningham, we've seen signs that he can be a really good player, but he's just on a bad team. I think you need to find a way to get more for James Wiseman. You know, James Wiseman, not effective enough for the contract that you're getting him, that you're giving him. Go get someone else. Go get multiple players that are more effective for their contract. And then once again, just go for a high draft pick next season. I included some top 3, and I believe what is CBS's way too early mock draft for 2025. They have Cooper Flagg, Ace Bailey, and Jaleel Batea going 1, 2, and 3, and I believe the Pistons are likely to get Ace Bailey. Just keep going for those high picks, and eventually I think that you'll get a Magic type of situation where they go from first overall to in the playoffs 2 years later, or first overall pick in the draft to playoffs 2 years later. And last up for the Eastern Conference, we have the Southeast Division. We have the offseason plans for the Southeast Division. This would include the Magic, the Heat, the Hawks, the Hornets, and the Wizards. This is probably the worst division in the NBA. A lot of work to be done here in this division. Of course, I believe a very nice picture in the background. Jimmy Butler, of course, this is his famous 56-point game against the Bucks in the playoffs. He absolutely popped off, and he set a playoff franchise record for most points scored on the Miami Heat with 56 points in a playoff game. But let's get with the Magic right now. The background on the Magic, they finished 47-35. They were 5th place in the Eastern Conference. They lost in 7 in the first round to the Cavaliers. They drafted Antonio Reeves with this in this recent draft, and they are $36.5 million under the cap. They have a lot of space to work with here. Excuse me. And what do they do with that space? Sign Paul George. Paul George just declined his player option to go back to the Clippers. And I've also included the starting lineup if they were to get George. Now, I think they would start Cole Anthony, Paul George, Franz Wagner, Paolo Banchero, and assuming he stays and is not traded away for some other player, Wendell Carter Jr. would be starting at the 5. I think this is a great starting 5, a major improvement from last season. I mean, they were the 5 seed. Without him, I think they could go as far as maybe the 3 seed with him. You know, I think they could be better than the Cavaliers. I think that maybe you even set up a little Magic versus Cavaliers rivalry here in the playoffs where they face each other a few years, and I think they have similar starting 5s, especially if the Cavaliers get Brandon Ingram. I think those are 2 games that are to watch. Some background on the Heat, they finished 46-36, 8th place in the Eastern Conference. They lost in 5 in the first round to the Boston Celtics. Of course, Jimmy Butler didn't play. Jimmy Butler got injured in the play-in game against the 76ers. That game would have sent them to New York to face the Knicks. But instead, they won the second play-in game and got faced with the Celtics in the first round, who they lost to in 5. They drafted Kello Ware and Nikola Djurcic with their draft picks this season, and they are $41.2 million over the cap in terms of their financial status. And so a plan for them this offseason, I think you need to get Jimmy some help. You know, I think he's constantly bringing this team to the finals. You know, it would have been interesting to see if he was healthy, how far would they have gotten? You know, they won 1 game against the Celtics without him. Would they have taken them to 7? You know, this is one of the best teams that we've ever seen in terms of the Celtics, you know. Get Jimmy some help. You know, get Jimmy some help, of course. Between the bubble and last year against the Nuggets, you know, I think that this Heat team needs to be more competitive and realize that they have a good player who needs someone around him who's got the same energy as him. You know, and the roster just needs to be shaken up. Some possible options for this team maybe to go get. Maybe some are far-fetched here, but it would be interesting to see on this team. James Harden, DeMar DeRozan, and Buddy Hield, all free agents. And then, of course, you drafted Kello Ware. I think you develop him along with Jaime Jaquez, who in the series against the Celtics had a pretty good series. Jaime Jaquez, of course, only a rookie, but very, very many people saw him as the best rookie besides Victor and Chet, and then maybe outside of Brandon Miller. But Jaime Jaquez was at least a top 4 rookie this season, and I think that is an amazing upside here for this Miami Heat team. Now let's go to the Atlanta Hawks. Of course, the Atlanta Hawks gaining a lot of publicity as of recent days with having the first overall pick in the NBA draft, to which they drafted Zachary Risacher. They finished 36-46. They were 10th in the Eastern Conference. They lost in the first play-in game to the Chicago Bulls, and they are $20.4 million over the cap. So a plan for the Hawks this offseason, of course, to your left, to the left of the slide, you have a picture of Risacher. He played in France, I believe. The Hawks' plan for this offseason, I think Trae Young and that should say Risacher could become a duo. And you should look at a third piece for this team, I think, not necessarily a star. Some possible options for this team, of course, Kyle Kuzma, I think, could be a great option. Bruce Brown and Jonathan Isaac are some other options that I think would work well. Some background on the Hornets. They finished 21-61, 13th in the Eastern Conference. They missed the play-in by 15 games. Of course, they drafted Tajane Salon and KJ Simpson. Now, Salon was a very questionable pick to many people with very many different options on the board, who many people would have thought would have been better for them to select. They have $22.5 million of cap space to work with, but I don't think they should be doing anything with it. You know, the Hornets are not a team where they really are going to go get a $22.5 million player and become an instant contender. of course, continue to go for high draft picks. I believe that that's what they need to do. They need to look for possible ways to get rid of LaMelo. I think that LaMelo's just not working in Charlotte. I don't think he's going to do very well unless Brandon Miller really starts to show up and they become a very good duo. And that brings me into the last bullet. Just continue to develop Brandon Miller here. And so some background on the Wizards. Of course, the second worst team in the NBA this season. They finished 15-67, just one game ahead of the Detroit Pistons, who we just said had one of the worst seasons we've ever seen. They were 14th in the East. They missed the play-in by 21 games. And with this draft, they drafted Alex Sarr second overall, and they drafted Dylan Jones in the second round, or in the first round, late first round. They are $5.9 million under the cap, which means they have that much money to work with. Some plan for the Wizards in the offseason. Of course, nice picture of Kyle Kuzma there off to the right. Drafted Alex Sarr. That was a good pick by them. I think they're going to be able to work with him and develop him, and he's going to become a great player for them. And this contradicts the Hawks slide, but keep the core intact. I said the Hawks should try and get Kuzma, but the Wizards should try and keep him. Jordan Poole, Kyle Kuzma, and Alex Sarr could turn into an interesting trio to watch. Poole had an off season and could come back better this year. He had a bad season this year, of course. Did way better on the Warriors, but maybe he realizes that he's the leader of this team and he needs to be able to score way more and have a better season. And then if the trio doesn't work this year, start seeking other ways to improve if you're the Wizards. Next up, we have the Western Conference teams, and that will be in a separate video. But once again, with free agency starting soon, we're going to be getting these videos up. We're going to be talking about it. We're going to probably have some more dialogue where we're both together in the same video. And keep looking for that. And remember to subscribe. Thank you so much for the support. We saw a lot of views on the last few videos. We're loving the support. We're really looking at how we can improve our channel. And we hope to see you in the future.